What if I told you that the freest thing in the universe is also its most perfect prisoner? What if the entity that needs no fuel, no engine, no permission to move, the thing that crosses galaxies without effort, that carries the energy of dying stars across billions of light years of empty space, is in the most profound sense physics can offer, completely and utterly trapped, not trapped by walls, not trapped by gravity, trapped by time itself, trapped in a cage built from the very geometry of reality, a cage so perfect that escape isn't just impossible, it's a logical contradiction. Pick up a candle, light it, watch the flame. That yellow-orange glow is releasing photons, particles of light, in every direction at 670 million miles per hour. They pour out of that candle like water from a broken dam, racing in all directions, bouncing off walls, entering your eyes, crossing the room in a few billionths of a second. They seem free, unstoppable, the fastest things that exist. But here is the secret that changes everything. Those photons are not free. They are frozen, absolutely, completely, irreversibly frozen in time. Each one of them is locked into a single eternal moment, unable to age, unable to change, unable to experience even 1 nanosecond of duration. They are the fastest things in existence, and they experience nothing, no time, no journey, no freedom to age or become or transform. They race at the maximum possible speed through space and simultaneously stand perfectly still in time. That is not a metaphor. That is not a poetic flourish. That is a precise, mathematically verified, experimentally confirmed statement about the nature of reality. And understanding why, really understanding the mechanism, the deep machinery of spacetime that produces this extraordinary paradox, will show you something about freedom, about time, about the universe that you cannot unsee. So stay with me, because this is going to get strange before it gets clear. Let me start with something ordinary, an ice cube in a glass of water. You set it on the table. It doesn't move through space. It just sits there melting slowly, changing. But here's what you never think about: it's moving. Furiously, it's moving through time at 1 second per second, rushing into the future at a rate nothing can change and nothing can stop. You're moving with it. Everything in that room, the glass, the table, the light coming through the window, is hurtling through time at exactly this rate. Now here's the question that cracked open the 20th century. What if time isn't separate from space? What if they're the same thing, woven into a single 4-dimensional fabric, and everything in the universe is constantly moving through that fabric at a fixed total speed? This is the insight that transformed physics. Hermann Minkowski, Einstein's old mathematics professor, put it most beautifully in 1908 when he said, "Henceforth space by itself and time by itself are doomed to fade away into mere shadows, and only a kind of union of the two will preserve an independent reality." He was right. Space and time are not separate stages on which physics performs. They are a single stage, spacetime, and every object in the universe moves through spacetime at the same total speed. That speed is c, the speed of light, 299,792,458 meters per second. You are moving through spacetime at the speed of light right now. So is the ice cube. So is the candle on your table. Every massive object in the universe is moving through spacetime at exactly c. The difference is the direction of that motion. You're spending almost all of your spacetime speed on time and almost none on space. You hurtle through time, and you barely drift through space by comparison. Now push this logic to its extreme. What happens when something spends all of its spacetime speed on space and none on time? What happens when the direction of motion through spacetime tilts completely into the spatial dimensions, leaving zero, not nearly zero, exactly zero for time? You get a photon, you get light, and that is the trap. Let me build this carefully because the mechanism is everything. Understanding the label isn't enough. Understanding the words isn't enough. We want to see why, the actual gears and levers of the universe that force this to be true. Start with a simple picture. Imagine spacetime as a flat surface like a table. You draw 2 axes, one horizontal for space, one vertical for time. An object sitting perfectly still in space traces a vertical line. It moves upward on the time axis, but doesn't move sideways on the space axis. An object moving through space traces a diagonal line. It moves both sideways through space and upward through time. The faster it moves through space, the more diagonal the line becomes. Now here's the critical rule: every object's world line, its path through spacetime, this diagonal line I'm describing, has the same total length per unit of proper time. Think of it like a velocity vector with a fixed magnitude. You can point it in different directions, but its length never changes. Tilted toward space, and you move faster through space at the cost of moving slower through time. Tilt it toward time, and you age quickly but cover little ground. This is not a choice. This is geometry. This is the shape of spacetime. Now tilt that vector all the way, not mostly toward space, all the way. Zero time component, maximum space component. The vector lies flat, pointing purely through space. What happens to time? It disappears. The object moving with that vector does not move through time at all. Its world line is horizontal. It stretches through space and not at all through time. That object is a photon. And here's the extraordinary consequence: a photon's world line connects 2 events, emission and absorption. And those 2 events are, from the photon's perspective, not separated by any time, The gap between them is zero, not small, not negligible, exactly, precisely, geometrically zero. The candle emits a photon. The photon travels across the room and hits the wall. From your perspective, a few nanoseconds elapse. From the photon's perspective, emission and absorption are the same moment. The photon doesn't experience the crossing of the room. It doesn't experience anything. It is born and it dies in the same instant, connected by a straight line through space that contains no time whatsoever. This is the trap. Light is trapped in an eternal present. But wait, and this is where it gets even stranger. Why does the geometry of spacetime have this particular structure? Why does the universe work this way? This goes deeper than Einstein's special relativity. It goes all the way down to the fundamental question of why the speed of light is the universal constant it is. And the answer leads us to something experimental. In 1887, Albert Michelson and Edward Morley set up an extraordinary experiment in Cleveland, Ohio. They wanted to detect the motion of Earth through the supposed luminiferous ether. The invisible substance scientists believed light traveled through, the way sound travels through air. Their apparatus split a beam of light and sent the two halves on perpendicular paths, then recombined them to look for interference patterns. If Earth moved through the ether, light moving with Earth's motion should be faster than light moving against it, just the way swimming with a river current is faster than swimming against it. The result was nothing. Null. The speed of light was identical in all directions, regardless of Earth's motion through space. They repeated the experiment. Other scientists repeated it again. Null every time. Light traveled at the same speed no matter what. This was one of the most embarrassing results in 19th century science. It destroyed the ether theory completely, and it forced a reckoning with the nature of reality that took another 18 years to fully resolve. Einstein's resolution in 1905 was audacious. Stop trying to explain why light speed is constant. Accept it as a fundamental postulate, and then work out everything that follows. What follows is this: if light speed is constant for all observers regardless of motion, then space and time cannot be fixed. They must adjust, must flex, must change for different observers in exactly the way needed to preserve that constant speed. Time dilation, the slowing of clocks for moving objects, is not a physical effect on the clocks. It's a geometric feature of the spacetime fabric. Moving clocks run slow because they're tilting their world line towards space and away from time, genuinely covering less temporal ground per unit of coordinate time, and light moving at exactly c through space has tilted its world line fully horizontal. It covers no temporal ground at all. Now let me show you the trap from the inside. Suppose, and this is a thought experiment in the tradition of Einstein himself, suppose you could gradually accelerate to faster and faster speeds, moving through space at an increasing fraction of c, at 10% of light speed, about 67 million miles per hour, a speed that would take you from Earth to the Moon in about 2 seconds. Your clock runs slower than a stationary clock by less than 1%, barely noticeable. Time is slightly compressed for you, you're tilting your world line slightly towards space. At 50% of light speed, your clock runs at about 87% of normal rate. You're aging 13% slower than someone at rest. The year you experience as 1 year. They experience as about 13.5 months. At 90% of light speed, your clock runs at about 44% of the stationary rate. You experience 1 year. They experience 2 years and 3 months. At 99% of light speed, your clock runs at about 14%. You experience 1 year. They experience over 7 years. At 99.99% of light speed, the gamma factor, the mathematical term for this time dilation, defined as 1 divided by the square root of 1 minus velocity squared over c squared, approaches 100. Your 1 year is their century. Do you see the pattern? Every increment of speed you gain through space costs you time. Not your awareness of time. You still feel time passing normally in your own frame. But the time you actually experience, the duration that elapses for you, shrinks relative to the stationary universe. You're buying space motion by selling time motion. Now push this to the limit. Push it all the way to c. Gamma becomes infinite. Your time dilation is total. No time passes for you relative to the universe at all. You have purchased maximum space motion by surrendering every last unit of time motion. You've traded the entirety of your temporal experience for pure spatial speed. But here's what that means for freedom. Is the photon free? It moves through space at maximum rate. Nothing in the universe moves through space faster. In that sense, it has complete spatial freedom. No friction, no drag, no energy cost, no resistance. But it has zero temporal freedom. It cannot choose when to arrive because there is no when for it. It cannot age, it cannot change, it cannot evolve from one state to another. Change requires time. Evolution requires duration. The photon is frozen in its own eternal instant, locked in a single unchanging configuration, unable to alter, unable to become, unable to do anything at all except occupy the timeless line connecting its emission to its absorption. A candle flame, by contrast, has rich temporal freedom. It changes, it flickers, it grows and shrinks. The chemistry of combustion evolves from moment to moment, creating new molecules, releasing energy in different forms, responding to air currents and fuel supply. The flame lives in time. It is in the most literal sense alive with temporal experience. The photon has no such life. It is the perfect prisoner of its own speed. Let me zoom out, drastically. Because the scale at which this plays out in the cosmos is where the full enormity of the trap becomes visible. The Andromeda Galaxy is approximately 537 million light-years from Earth. That means the light we see from it tonight has been traveling from our reference frame for 537 million years. When that light left Andromeda, Homo sapiens did not yet exist. Our ancestors were early members of the genus Homo walking the African savanna with no concept of galaxies or light speed or spacetime geometry. The universe was different. Earth was different. Everything we know as human civilization, agriculture, writing, cities, science, philosophy, all of it fits inside a thin slice of the last 12,000 years, a rounding error against the 537 million years that light spent crossing the void between Andromeda and your eye. But the photon you're looking at tonight experienced none of that. Not 1 year of it, not 1 second. From the moment it was released by a star in Andromeda to the moment it hit your retina, zero time elapsed from its perspective. The 537 million year journey was for the photon a single, instantaneous, timeless event. Now go further. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang itself, fills the entire sky. It was released approximately 380,000 years after the universe began, when the universe had finally cooled enough for electrons to combine with protons and form neutral hydrogen atoms, allowing photons to travel freely for the first time. That event happened 13.8 billion years ago. Those photons have been traveling from our frame for 13.8 billion years. Their wavelengths stretched by the expansion of space from high-energy X-rays to faint microwave radiation. From their perspective, emission and absorption, same moment, one timeless instant. The entire history of the universe, the formation of the first stars, the ignition of the first galaxies, the birth of quasars, the coalescence of solar systems, the emergence of planets, the origin of life, the evolution of intelligence, the building of radio telescopes to detect this ancient radiation, all of this is 0 seconds to those photons. The universe's entire 13.8 billion year lifespan is nothing to light, not a brief moment, nothing. Literally no duration at all. This is not metaphor. This is the measured, verified consequence of space-time geometry. The trap is complete. The trap is total. Light is frozen in time across the entire history and breadth of the cosmos. But now the question changes. We've established the trap. We understand the mechanism, so the question becomes, so what? Why does this matter? Why should the temporal imprisonment of a photon mean anything to you, a time-experiencing, time-bound creature sitting in your chair? Because this tells us something fundamental about what time is for. Time is not a river flowing past everything equally. Time is not a backdrop against which events happen. Time is what massive things have. Time is the freedom that matter purchases by not going as fast as light. Your temporal experience, your ability to change, to grow, to make decisions, to have a yesterday different from your today is a direct consequence of your mass. Your mass is what prevents you from moving at sea. Your mass is what tilts your world line away from horizontal and toward the future. Your mass is why you have time. Without mass you'd have no time. You'd be like a photon. Maximally free in space, completely trapped in time, frozen in an eternal now with no capacity for change, no experience, no duration. Think about that from the inside out. The electromagnetic force, the force holding your atoms together, keeping the electrons in their orbits, creating the chemical bonds that make you a coherent object rather than a cloud of separate particles, is mediated by photons. Virtual photons, technically, which are off-shell and not fully real in the way a visible photon is, but photons nonetheless. The force that enables you to exist as a structured, time-experiencing object is carried by entities that exist outside time. Your temporal freedom is literally built on a foundation of timeless messengers. Every time an electron in your body interacts with another charged particle, a virtual photon flickers in and out of existence. That photon carries the electromagnetic force between the particles, adjusting their trajectories, holding the atom together. And that photon experiences no time. It is born and dies in the same instant, doing its work, if we can call it work. In a single timeless exchange, you are a time-experiencing structure assembled from timeless interactions. Your capacity for change is built on a substrate that cannot change. Your freedom to grow and evolve and age is suspended above a foundation of perfect temporal imprisonment. Now suppose, and let yourself really inhabit this scenario, suppose we discovered a way to give photons mass, just a tiny amount, not zero but a very small non-zero value. What would change? This isn't pure fantasy. Scientists actually investigated this question. If photons had mass, even an incredibly small mass, say 10 to the power of minus 54 kilograms, compared to an electron's mass of about 9 times 10 to the power of minus 31 kilograms, the electromagnetic force would behave differently at very large distances. It would weaken faster than the inverse square law predicts. Radio signals across the galaxy would fade in ways they currently don't. Precise measurements of magnetic fields in the solar wind set an upper limit on the photon mass of about 10 to the power of minus 54 kilograms. For all experimental purposes, the photon is massless. Its mass is either exactly zero or so vanishingly small that no instrument we've ever built can detect the difference. But here's the thought experiment. If photons had mass even this tiny amount, they couldn't move at exactly c. They'd move at very nearly c but not quite. And if they moved at very nearly c but not quite, they'd experience time. Just a tiny sliver of time per journey, billionths of a nanosecond even for cosmological distances, but some time. They would no longer be perfectly frozen. They'd experience the faintest whisper of duration, and every force in nature would change. The electromagnetic force weakening with distance would make atoms less stable. Chemistry would be different. The universe's structure at every scale, from atoms to galaxies, depends on the electromagnetic force, and the electromagnetic force depends on the photon being exactly, perfectly, precisely massless. The photon's perfect imprisonment in time is not incidental, it is structural. It holds the universe together. Paul Dirac, one of the most extraordinary physicists of the 20th century, spent decades thinking about the deep nature of light and time. Dirac was famously taciturn. His colleagues joked that his unit of speech was 1 word per hour, but when he spoke about the elegance of physical law, he lit up. He believed deeply that beautiful mathematics corresponded to physical truth, that equations which had a certain aesthetic completeness were more likely to describe nature correctly than ugly, patched-together approximations. Dirac's equation, derived in 1928, combined quantum mechanics with special relativity to describe the electron. It predicted the positron, the antiparticle of the electron, before anyone had found it experimentally. Carl Anderson found it in 1932, confirming Dirac's mathematics. But what Dirac's equation revealed about photons was equally profound: the photon's zero rest mass, its status as the carrier of electromagnetism, its perfect speed. All of these fell out of the deep mathematical structure of relativistic quantum field theory as necessary consequences, not assumptions. The universe couldn't have made photons differently. Given the symmetries of nature, the gauge invariance of electromagnetism, the structure of Lorentz transformations, the requirements of quantum field theory, photons must be massless. They must move at exactly c, they must be trapped in their eternal present. This isn't God choosing arbitrarily. This is logical necessity embedded in the mathematical foundations of physics. Schrödinger, who gave us the wave equation describing how quantum states evolve through time, was fascinated by exactly this asymmetry. Massive particles have wave functions that evolve through time, that spread and collapse and interfere in time-dependent ways. Photons, in contrast, are described by fields that don't have a proper rest frame, whose time evolution is fundamentally different because they don't have a proper time. Even in quantum mechanics, light sits at the boundary of what time evolution means. Let me now address the second half of our title directly: the secret that breaks freedom. Because we've established the trap, we've seen the prison. But the phrase breaks freedom cuts both ways. Does understanding this destroy something beautiful, or does it reveal something more beautiful in its place? Here's what the trap of light tells us about freedom. True freedom, maximum freedom, the kind of freedom that can cross the universe without a fuel tank, without permission, without resistance. That freedom costs everything temporal. The photon is maximally free in space and maximally imprisoned in time. It can go anywhere, it cannot become anything. You, by contrast, are limited in space. You're stuck on a rock orbiting a medium-sized star in an unremarkable galaxy. You move through space at speeds laughably small compared to light. The fastest crewed spacecraft ever launched, the Apollo 10 capsule, on its return from the moon, reached about 24,791 miles per hour, which is 0.37% of the speed of light. You are enormously slow. You are spatially constrained in ways a photon never is. But you have something the photon can never have: duration, the experience of change, the ability to be different tomorrow than you are today, the capacity to learn, to grow, to choose, to affect the future in ways that depend on what happened in your past. These things require time. They require precisely the temporal freedom that the photon's maximum spatial speed has destroyed. And so we arrive at the central paradox. The one that I believe Feynman would have loved: the most free thing in the universe is also the most trapped. Maximum spatial freedom and maximum temporal imprisonment are not opposites. They are the same thing. They are the two faces of moving through spacetime at light speed. Your spatial imprisonment, your plodding slowness compared to light, is not a limitation. It is the price of temporal freedom. It is the cost of being able to change, to grow, to live in the richest sense of the word. Every massive object in the universe, every electron, every proton, every galaxy pays this price. None of them can move at c. All of them have time. All of them can change. The universe arranges it so that nothing can have both: maximum speed through space, maximum experience of time. Pick one. You don't get both. The geometry of spacetime enforces this trade with mathematical perfection. This is where it becomes personal. You are reading this, or watching this, hearing this right now. In this moment, you are in the most profound sense a time creature. You exist not just at a point in space, but at a moment in time. Your identity is temporal. Who you are now is different from who you were 10 years ago, and who you'll be 10 years from now. You carry a past and you face a future. Your consciousness is sequential, one thought following another, one moment preceding the next. None of this is available to light. The photon from your candle flame, racing toward the wall of your room at 670 million miles per hour, does not have a past and a future. It has a single eternal instant. It cannot remember the candle. It cannot anticipate the wall. It cannot choose, cannot change, cannot learn, cannot be affected by its own history because it has no history. There is no its own, because ownership requires continuity through time, and the photon has no continuity. You have all of this, your temporal richness, your entire inner life, your memories and anticipations, your experience of duration. The very fact that this sentence takes a few seconds to read, and those seconds feel like something to you, all of this is a direct consequence of your mass. Your mass prevents you from moving at sea. Your prevention from moving at sea gives you time. Your time gives you change. Your change gives you experience. Your experience gives you everything that makes you you. The light is free in space and a prisoner in time. You are a prisoner in space and free in time. And of these two options, I can't tell you which is better for the universe, but I can tell you which one laughs, which one wonders, which one looks up at the night sky and asks questions about the nature of light. It's the slow one. It's always been the slow one. So the next time you light a candle and watch the photons pour from the flame, spreading out in every direction at speeds you cannot comprehend, traveling without effort through space that would take you a lifetime to cross, see them for what they are. Not enviously fast, not admirably free. See them as the perfect prisoners they are. They are frozen, perfectly, completely, irrevocably frozen in time. Each one of them locked in an eternal now, unable to age by even a single Planck time, unable to change or evolve or respond, maximally fast through space and maximally dead to time. The candle flame releasing them lives. The photons racing away from it do not. They simply are timelessly and unchangeably, the geometry connecting their birth to their death in a single instant that contains no duration. And you, sitting there watching the flame flicker, experiencing the warmth on your face, noticing how the shadows move across the wall, you are doing something the photons cannot. You are experiencing duration. You are living in time. You are converting your relative slowness through space into the extraordinary richness of temporal experience. You are doing what only massive things can do, becoming. The trap of light is real. The secret is this: the trap is not a flaw in the design of the universe. It is the engine of the design of the universe. By imprisoning light in time, the geometry of spacetime liberates everything else to change, to evolve, to experience, to matter. The photon's perfect spatial freedom and perfect temporal imprisonment are the fixed points around which everything else is organized. Every atom, every star, every living thing navigates the trade between space, motion, and time, motion using light speed as the boundary that defines what the trade means. Without the trap, there is no time. Without time, there is no change. Without change, there is no universe worth speaking of, just a frozen, timeless geometry with nothing happening in it. The light is trapped so that you can be free.